I think it depends on where you stand. So I guess the whole NFTs or that narrative kind of comes from a lot of people that experience the hype and the excitement, the high floor prices. I think something that people underestimate is that most projects are way further ahead today than they were back then during the last bull market. So I don't think they are that. The market certainly is in a different stage than it was back then. But I think looking at it like outside of floor prices and outside of the more hype metrics, I think we're doing pretty good.
Guys, welcome back to another episode of Andrew Asks How podcast. I have a good friend with me here today. You guys may or may not know him. He may or may not be one of the most trusted, quote-unquote, influencers on X within the Web3 sphere, Wale.swoosh, who is now Wale.mocha. How are you doing?
Let's go. Thanks so much for having me. Doing amazing. Good to be on the show.
Well, quick question for you right off the gutter, bluntly as well. The people want to know, Wale, are NFTs dead?
I think it depends on where you stand. So I guess the whole NFTs or that narrative kind of comes from a lot of people that experience the hype and the excitement, the high floor prices during the last NFT bull run. So of course it depends. If you compare like the NFT market now to the NFT market back then, whether it's volume or floor prices or market cap, you could think they are dead. But at the same time, if you've been around back then, if you compare like the culture around it today, I think most people that really had a big impact back then are still around today. We got a lot of new participants. And at the same time, I think something that people underestimate is that most projects are way further ahead today than they were back then during the last bull market. So I don't think they are dead. The market certainly is in a different stage than it was back then. But I think looking at it like outside of floor prices and outside of the more hype metrics, I think we're doing pretty good.
Well, you mentioned that the projects, the brands, are further ahead today than they are, 12 months ago, 24 months ago. What metric are you using to say that they're further ahead? And I assume it's not floor price.
No, it's not. It's not floor price. And I don't use like a specific metric. I just look at most of the quote unquote bigger blue chip collections when they came out back then, and I'm sure you remember. Most of them had like really fancy roadmaps that kind of laid out where they wanted to go. But most projects were far from delivering anything like that today. I think it looks different in a lot of cases. We have Azuki publishing their anime series.
Yep.
Even Bolivia Club and other side. Other side may not be like ready to go, but I would argue it's certainly further ahead than it was than when they minted in 2022. So just looking at what projects are building or whether they are moving towards what they promised in the roadmaps, I think it doesn't look perfect. I don't think that's fair to say, but it certainly looks better and further ahead than it did a few months or even a few years ago.
A lot of people will know you from, crypto Twitter, from Web3 Twitter, Web3X, CryptoX, whatever label we're giving this now. A lot of people know you from not the level of expertise. I don't think anybody's an expert, but I think your level of understanding the market, where we're currently at, where it could go, and what's transpired before, the way you have the ability to articulate information, kind of put it through storytelling that makes it really digestible for the average person who's just kind of getting in, which is super powerful. Now, the way that people know you through your work, do you think that you yourself as a human being, to humanize you now, you are the work that you do, or you are completely separate from your work? And do you, Wale, want to be known through your work?
It's a great question. I think certainly when it comes to me building an audience, me building my own brand, it came to a large extent from the work that I did in the space, from the content that I did, from my takes on the timeline. So I think that certainly plays a big part. And I guess most people that know me in the space or appreciate the stuff that I do, it came primarily from my content, from what I did in the space. At the same time, I think it's always like you can do good content, but especially when it's like the kind of content I do, most content, like if you do videos or other content in the space, it's the same. There's always a lot of personality in it, right? The way you produce the content, what you talk about, in what tone you write or talk about specific topics. There's always a lot of personality outside of the outside of quote unquote being an expert in a specific area or a specific topic. I think there's always a lot of personality when it comes to producing the content itself. So I guess it's both, but if I had to pick one, it's probably the work and the content itself.
Now, well, you know this better than I do. A lot of people who are very good at their craft or very good at their art form, whatever you want to call this, they are defined and known through that one thing. And because they excelled so well at that one thing, that's what they're known for forever. Example, Iron Man. He's now known as Iron Man, even though he's doing other movies and had a recent hit. So it is what it is. But with that being said, Wale, people know you one way, but I do want to ask you yourself, Wale, from the people that know you best in your personal life and your family, I assume your close friends, who are you to them? And I assume you're not just the massive, very popular, very trustworthy creator on X, on social, to them.
Yeah, I'm definitely not. Like most people from my friends and my family IRL, in a lot of cases they don't really get like what I'm doing in the first place. So it's very separate. Like of course, especially during the last bull market, friends were getting more interested. So I joined the NFT space in early 2021. So it was like really the months after that that got people really interested. So I got a lot of questions about, okay, how does this stuff work and everything. But that was before I grew a following, right? I was just like someone who was on the trading side, who got really interested and deep in this stuff. But wasn't like a quote unquote, even though I don't like this term, influencer or KOL or whatever. So that changed now. But at the same time, the relationships that I have IRL are not really like connected at all to what I do in Web3.
Well, I will also ask back to the topic of NFTs. Obviously, the market kind of works in forms. You know this. It's usually Bitcoin, ETH, alts, etc. Well, do you think, because we're now seeing such a massive point of saturation with NFTs across all chains, do you think that the NFTs will quote unquote pump? Price action goes up, price goes up. Do you think that will happen, or in correlation to in what cycle we are with alts or Bitcoin or ETH? Or do you think the last cycle still stays true, where the last thing to kind of move upwards in price action, and that goes bizarre in a peak of, massive euphoria, is NFTs? Or do you think these NFTs on other chains will pump now and not so much after, because they're kind of following that natural cycle dynamic of ETH, Bitcoin, alts, NFTs, etc.?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. I stopped doing like a lot of predictions about the future of the space after the past 2 years in the space. But I think what we can do is like look back at the first like really hype cycle when it came to NFTs, and we saw like first like bigger movements in Bitcoin and ETH, and then it kind of transpired to smaller alts, and then later into NFTs. I have no idea what it will look this time. Also, when it comes like to the first part of your question, will we see like another run in ETH NFTs projects similar to maybe how it looked looked back then, I'm not sure. I think the 2021, 2022, early 2022 bull market was like something really special just from an attention standpoint. But at the same time, I think the time for NFTs will definitely come again, and it will probably, if I had to guess, and again, that's not a prediction, that's more like a guess. I would think first we will see like a bigger movement in majors and alts, and then it will kind of come back to NFTs. But it could move different. I think what we saw with ordinals is interesting. Like ordinals had really the time in the spotlight while Bitcoin went up really, really big. So it can always look different, but when we look at the past, I think that's usually based on like a really small data set, but it's quote unquote usually how it works.
If I had to ask you, Wale, who are the faces of NFTs? If we had to create an NFT Rushmore, right, throughout the past 4 years, would you put yourself on there? And feel free to be as modest as you can.
That's a good question. I would not, just because,
okay,
especially when we talk about the past few years, which would include like the last bull market. I was just not around back then, so just thinking back, there were a lot of people that inspired me to even create like my X account in the first place and start like creating content. So if we talk about content creators, I think there are a few other names that had more impact when it comes to culture over a longer period of time than I have. Brad Guy is an example. Minister of NFTs as an example. NFT stats, kind of different different type of content, but I think he is another major player. So I think there are definitely other people that had more impact there that would belong on this smart Rushmore of creators.
Have you created content before Web3 content was created? Like before you started your Web3 content creation journey, did you create content before this?
I didn't. I mean, not for personal purposes. Okay. Before I joined Web3, I worked in marketing as at a big like automotive company here in Germany, where I'm from, in marketing. So I created or participated in like some type of or some form of content creation, I guess, but it wasn't like you can compare it to what Web3 is or what Web3 content is both very different. At the same time, I think a few things that I learned there, or other things that I learned earlier during school, university, especially when it came to writing, which is like my primary way to create content. I think there's definitely something I learned there and a few takeaways I had there. But no, I didn't like create content from other personal pages or for third parties or protocols on in Web3 or outside of Web3 before I before I created my own account and became like a content creator.
What was the moment in time when you created this piece of content, this piece of material, whatever it was, or spoke on this space, that in your life you knew it was going to create a massive paradigm shift? Like, take us to that moment, Wale, of when you did something, saw that there was an indicator of like, okay, there's something here, let me double down on this, let me triple down on this. Now, looking back in hindsight, brought you to where you are right now, probably being, in my opinion, one of the biggest faces in our industry, period. What was that moment for you?
I think looking back, it was a time when within a few weeks, I had like a very viral threads, or a few very viral threads that did really well, like hundreds of thousands of views, above 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 likes. Maybe, and I told this a few times, probably the first thread that really blew up, and I guess that put me on the map a little bit, was like end of 2022 or autumn of 2022. I don't remember the exact time. And let me think back. I think the name of the thread was "We wrote your your holders or die, something like that. Like basically what it was about. It was referencing. It was about the time when Artifact dropped their monolith, if you remember, and it was like the second monolith, and it was like not a big success just because like what people got out of it wasn't a great value add for holders, at least in the eyes of many holders. And that was kind of the occasion of me writing about it. Another example I added, if I remember it correctly, was the Goda pass, which was like maybe some of the listeners will remember. It was like an art project where holders basically got like art drops from partner artists, and they also did like a drop where they didn't like put their holders in the top priority, and that was basically the whole setup. Apparently, it resonated with a lot of people, and that was like the first thread that got viral. Then I did the next one a few days later, another one with like 100 to 200K views, then another one, and I think from there it really started clicking from my personal kind of state of mind, because I saw, okay, I'm getting really like a lot of views and a lot of attention from it, and on the other hand, I also got like a lot of great feedback, which kept me going.
You've had quite the evolution. I think different forms of you existed up until this moment. I think you're going to continue to evolve in the space or outside of the space. We have no idea. It's whatever you decide to do, which I think either way is a win-win, as long as the progress and the consistency is still there. What does the next evolution, Wale, look like for you? Because I can't imagine that this becomes your peak of your career in the industry, or even peak existence for you. What does the next evolution of you look like? And maybe you're already striving towards it. Fantastic. Maybe you haven't given it a thought, or maybe you already know where you're going to go. But what does the next evolution, Wale, for you look like?
Yeah, so I always kind of tried like so maybe to start a different point. Something I noticed, and I think you're right. I think in the lifetime of like a creator in Web3, you always undergo like different stages. And what I noticed, and maybe looking back to when I started and my come up in 2022, late 2022, I think it was also something that helped me like that. There were a few creators who became, I don't want to say lazy, but didn't like put out as much content or as good of a content than they did back then. So that's always something I wanted to try to avoid, like falling into the trap of becoming complacent, like chilling. Okay, I all say, just like when I hit 30K, 50K, I always try to avoid to go, okay, now I have 50K, I can chill, I can go slower. So I don't look at it like, okay, what is the end game or the next stage? It's always like from a content perspective. And I know I talk to a lot of creators, like small and big. The really successful ones, they think the same way. It's always day one, right? It's always every day is a new way to kind of compete for attention, compete to stay relevant. So that's probably the main goal. There are different tools to get there, right? Different mediums where you can put out content. That's one of the major things that I tried this year, that I will continue to expand. So different ways of doing content, not just within content, not just threads, but there are other mediums we mentioned: videos, newsletter, audio spaces, a lot of different avenues you can go as a creator. And at the same time, I think that's also equally important, kind of expanding what you talk about. I think for the first few months, or even 1 year, 1.5 years, I was really super focused on NFTs, on ETH, right? That was kind of the main thing I wrote about. And in recent months, I tried to kind of expand to Solana NFTs more, to ordinals now that they are really in the center of the attention. So I think that's also important to kind of adapt to what people are talking about, but at the same time, kind of staying true to kind of your area of expertise. That's another thing I saw a lot in other creators. Like sometimes there are these metas popping up in Web3, right? So I think that's all of a sudden really interesting for a few weeks, and all of a sudden like everyone becomes an expert in it. So I always try to kind of stay true to what I really know, and I feel like that's NFTs on ETH or NFTs in general. But at the same time, starting to talk more about other ecosystems, knowing and recognizing that's not like where I'm expert or where I'm there to explain like to the OGs. But at the same time, I think that also brings value in and of itself. Like when you're not an expert, maybe when you write about stuff, you can also write like from the perspective of someone who may just learn about this or that today, or who might be interested, okay, how I can get started into in this topic. So I think that's also a benefit. But balancing all these different parts, I guess that's the biggest challenge for all creators over a long period of time.
Well, I can't imagine that your growth is forever and always going to be limited in NFTs or in crypto or in Web3. And I say that because if you look back in history, the best creators that know how to create through different means of distribution, that really get the game, that understand that people actually like the people take to, right? I think you can't actually wire that. I think it happens, or, it doesn't happen. I think it's the X factor. I think part of you has that factor without being doxxed, which is quite impressive. And I can't imagine, Wale, that like your final evolution or like your later evolution in like 10 years from now is still in our industry. I can almost imagine that you almost get to a massive pinnacle point in the industry, and then you hop into another industry and your following kind of blows up again, just because you're transferring the skills that you've done over 10,000 hours of in our industry. Is that something that's ever on your mind? Like, am I always going to be doing Web3? Maybe I want to go do, sports threads, or maybe I want to go do gambling threads where the niche is a lot bigger and probably room for popularity and, jobs that will play, 7 figures plus for what you're currently doing. Any thoughts on those?
Yeah, so I would disagree. I like from today's standpoint, 100%, but I have a very optimistic kind of outlook of how Web3 will evolve over time. And I think there's, like, looking at today, of course, there's like a way broader audience in other areas. At the same time, I think taking like the long-term perspective of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, I think Web3, the attention around Web3, the attention around NFTs in general, I think it will change, and it will onboard a lot more people. What it will look like, I don't know. But I think being positioned in that area, and just like from my comment in the past two years, if it continues to go anything like that, I'm very confident that Web3 is still the place to go. That being said, 100%, like we have a lot of talented people in our space that are kind of expanding in different areas. I think that's really, really smart. Maybe even merging like different parts together, like Web3 with something different maybe. But yeah, I think I have a very optimistic outlook. So I think long term Web3 will look very different than it does today, which will also bring more opportunities or more benefits to creators in the space.
Well, you've obviously done a fantastic job at diagnosing many problems and many solutions in the industry, as well as not predicting, but having insights data-wise, as well as analytically, as well as even just social and a touch on culture with your posts, your threads over the past months that we've all been digesting them. Well, what is your litmus test, the bar that lets you decide, okay, this is a fake trend versus this is a real trend? This is something that I'm going to get involved in. This is something I don't want to touch. What's that litmus test for you, Wale, that looks like, that defines real versus fake trends?
Yeah, I don't think you can kind of fake the kind of authentic way our space works with it, which is like in a lot of ways really grassroots, like what people are talking about, what happens. Like I'm produce content, like I'm on the kind of producement side, but at the same time I'm also like a consumer, right? So I'm active on Twitter, on X, a lot. I read a lot of stuff that people write, small accounts, big accounts. So And from that, I usually get like a good understanding. Okay, is this really something that has potential? Is it something that gets like a lot of attention right now, independent of whether it's like a long-term thing, if it will be still around in a few months or years, or if it's just a short-term matter, which is fine too. Like we've seen in the past 2 to 3 years, a lot of things that popped up for a few weeks and then disappeared again. But it was still like fun, or there was a lot to learn, or a lot of money to be made, right? So I think that's always different parts to it. But I think to get to your question, the best way to identify it is just to read like what other people think, what other people are writing, different opinions on it. And that's usually also how I decide like if I do content around something or not. How relevant is it like within the core, what I call kind of the core Web3 community? How relevant is it there? How many people are talking about it? Are people interested in it? Are people interested to learn more? Or is it really just like a narrative pushed maybe from the project itself and a few people that are like involved on a like sponsored deal or whatever? So I think that's always important to differentiate.
How can what you just said, how can you make that applicable and kind of operationalize that and put it into action where they can go do the thing? Because that's what it comes down to every day. You just got to do the thing. What are the leading versus lagging indicators, Wale, that you kind of look at? You can kind of say, okay, this is happening, which means now this is going to happen. Now the lagging things already happened, which means that the what happened is already transpired. What are the leading and lagging indicators that you can pick up on for any trends period where there's off-chain social sentiment that when they happen, you already know what's going to happen or have a greater indication of making the right call, the right decision?
Yeah, so great question. I think looking back at the past 2 to 3 years, especially during the bear market, I got a lot of information, kind of seeing a lot of trends early, just from this social impact that a lot of them have, right? Whether we talk about SocialFi, whether we talk about like the meme coin run that we saw, not the current one, but the one that we still had during the bear market, there were like a lot of social indicators just from people getting hype within a kind of environment where, if we think back to the bear market, there was not too much to get hyped about, but people still stayed around. People still got excited around specific metas popping up. Back then, if you remember, it was also easier because there was not too much happening to really dominate the timeline when there was really a meta popping up. So that's like where I think it's the best first step to get like an understanding of what's hot in that current moment, like what are people talking about, what are people interested, what could maybe also from kind of the social conversation transpire into when we talk on-chain, like more transactions or more volume or more attention from bigger market participants. But usually the first place where I start is kind of the social impact that a lot of these trends and metas have early.
Do you think, Wale, that ordinals and runes are something that is here to stay? Or do you think this is just a trend? This is just a fad? This is just a new piece of the massive crypto puzzle that will not have a long-lasting effect?
So my thinking, they're kind of evolved. Like when ordinals came out back then, like the first ordinals run, if you remember, like people changing their PFPs, orange background and everything. That's something I considered cringe back then, because I saw like it's just way too much hype for the stage where ordinals were in back then. I did a post like a few months later, which got like a crazy amount of views and engagement, which was like a screenshot of ordinals trading volume versus other chains. And if you remember, like ordinals were hot for a few weeks, and then they disappeared like for months, right? I think trading volume was behind basically all chains, and maybe I can find the screenshot again. But it was like behind a lot of other trading volume, but a lot of other chains. It was basically that. So that's how my thinking evolved. Back then, I understood like, okay, this hype, it's hard to keep up with, especially since it's similar to a lot of the hype trains that we saw during the bear market, when all of a sudden everyone gets hyped, changing the PFPs. A lot of influencers changing the PFPs to orange backgrounds was like a top signal to me. And that's what I wrote in the post. At the same time, and I wrote this too, like the first post got a lot of attention, but I actually did 2 follow-up tweets, and in the second follow-up tweet, I wrote something along the lines of, I don't think like ordinals are dead forever, but the initial hype was too big. Right now, I think they definitely have staying power. I don't think they will disappear. I also think like it actually helped ordinals to kind of disappear from kind of the public hype radar for a few months. So for the infrastructure to be built, for kind of the real core believers to stay, and kind of getting all the I don't want to say grifters, but like the people from ETH that came over to make a quick buck, for them to disappear. I think that helped. So right now, I think they're in a healthy state, and I think it's, again, I don't like to make predictions, but I think it's easy to say that they are here to stay. Whether they will outperform ETH NFTs or Sol NFTs, I don't know. Whether they will perform better or worse, I think everything is possible. But in general, I think they've built a lot of powerful communities already, that also had like a big impact, social impact, way bigger even than it was during the first kind of hype cycle for ordinals. So yeah, I definitely think they're here to stay. When it comes to runes, I'm pretty optimistic too. Like, I get the thesis behind it. Again, I think the first hype was probably too big, considering that there's still a lot of infrastructure to be needed for like the average crypto degen to participate. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's kind of the same way that kind of all the ordinals journey looked like, that the initial hype was maybe a little bit overblown, then it will be quiet for a few weeks or a few months, and then it comes back even more. So yeah, I think both are definitely here to stay.
Obviously, Wale, there's like lasting for the trends. We can move the conversation. There's obviously like social trends, like what you mentioned with the orange background, which might have been a top signal. And then there's the on-chain trends, like the software that gets developed, the different things like E3 staking, these things like this. Well, which one out of the business development / social trends versus the technological trends, which ones do you think are likely to make a not an easier bet, but a bet that you could say we're probably better off betting on the tech than we are betting off of the socialness, that would encourage people to make the right decision more often than not?
Yeah, I think there are always kind of evolvements of trends we see, and that's usually what I'm most bullish on. To take maybe one example out of it, social farming, right? The first kind of iteration of social farming, it was, to me, I don't want to say annoying, but I didn't like to see it on the timeline, like people spamming the tickets. Of course, people made a lot of money there, so more power to them. But just from a consumer point of view, I didn't like that, and I didn't participate in it myself. And then went on for a few months, right? And then kind of Moon came out with a new way of or new take on social farming in a smarter way, in my opinion. And it completely changed the narrative, right? Most bigger, quote unquote, bigger accounts, bigger influencers didn't participate in the first iteration of social farming, but that changed now that Moon had kind of more focus on quality content. We got people participating like crazy. Yes. A lot of other bigger creators. So that's usually what I'm most bullish on. The first iteration of stuff like this is usually a good way to test, like, is this something that can work? But what I'm most bullish on is usually like the second, the third iteration, where there are new takes on it, new ways maybe to improve like the shortcomings of like prior products. And I think social farm is a great way to see how such an evolution can look like.
I have to ask, do Web3 games have gamers?
I guess they have. There are a few games that have like a good gamer base. In a lot of cases, I think like the gaming narrative is just a way to pump bags or pump tokens or pump NFTs. I don't think that's different like to other areas. Like there are always narratives popping up. But I guess long term, kind of the winners, of course, will be like the gaming project that really have like games that have gamers that are not mainly driven by financial motives, by the goal of making money out of it or farming something, but to play because they actually enjoy it. And I think on that front, we can definitely still have room like for more projects that kind of build in that direction. That being said, there are already projects that are doing this pretty well. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, in a lot of cases, I would argue it's more the financial motive or the narrative motive than the actual game itself.
Well, many people have asked you, when are you going to docs?
Great question. So I get this question a lot. I didn't see like the need for me to docs yet. I think it's one of the benefits, if you will, of kind of Web3, that you can quote unquote hide like between your monkey or your penguin, or in my case your Azuki PFP, and kind of be judged not by like who you are as an individual, or kind of, I don't know, how you look, if you're male or female, if you are whatever, like IRL. It's more like really the type of stuff that you produce, whether it's as on a content creator side or as on a project side. So I always saw this like at one of the major benefits of Web3 and NFTs, and kind of the way kind of the culture around NFTs works. So I didn't see like need for me to dox. And every time I saw like people doxing or getting doxed, if you remember, like the Body Yacht Club founders getting doxed. I don't know who was it, who doxed him. Was like a bigger newspaper. I don't remember who it was. I always look at it and say, nah, that's kind of sad, because I like the narrative of kind of like a builder that did something great in Web3. And if you look at the Yuga founders, the way they had a rose to fame, it wasn't because they dogs and had like a crazy background or something like that. It was because they really did something great in the space, it innovated and delivered value, and built like connection with a lot of people. So that's why I didn't see like the reason to dox. I made it so far without doxing.
Yes.
That being said, maybe in the future I will dox, but there are no real plans for now.
Now, Will, this question is going to be a little bit off base, but I'm personally curious for this. You're someone who knows about the industry. You get the culture, you get the people like you, which is the main important thing. You have a massive community around you, which is a massive plus. You've managed to create a massive community around you that's not built off of speculation, and I think that's very impressive. Will Wale.swoosh, Wale.mocha now, will you ever release a token or a product or an NFT or anything that somebody can purchase?
So we'll definitely never launch a token, like a pre-sale, anything. That's, if I ever post something like this, I've either lost my mind or my account is hacked. So if I ever post like a wallet for token pre-sale, that's definitely not me. When it comes to a product or a project or whatever, it's actually, when we go back to my beginnings in this space, I always kind of had the goal of launching like a project. I always thought, okay, this is something I would love to do. That being said, I'm really comfortable kind of in my creator spot right now, kind of creating content, building a community, but that is not like based on NFT or a project or a collection, but as you mentioned, like just people that like to engage with each other, with each other's content. So that's the kind of focus for now. But yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely something, or ideas that I have just from the type of content that I write. Like, as you mentioned, I write a lot about culture, a lot about what projects are doing wrong, what projects are doing right. So I guess at some point maybe, but for now I'm really, really happy with being a creator and kind of covering what's going on in the space, because that's also still like today, even though I've been in the space for 3 years now, there's still every day like something new you can learn, or something new you recognize in the space. So it's still an exciting spot to be in.
I'll also ask you this, Wale. And you take this any angle you would like. This is, subjective. It's your response. Our industry, and there's obviously different, fragments of it, right? There's NFTs, there's DeFi, there's the gambling stuff, which is everywhere. What part of this or any industry, Wale, like this, the fragments of it, what do you think it's missing, and what would you add to it?
I think what's missing right now, when we talk like about the NFT space in particular, is kind of, and I don't know if we can ever replicate this again, or if we ever can go back to this, but kind of the OG vibes of the NFT space. That's something like, if you've been around, and I actually don't know when you joined the NFT space, would love to hear. But when you were around like back then in 2021 and early 2022, in a lot of ways it was a different kind of vibe. Not just because number go up and everything, but just from the way people looked at projects, the way projects also behaved. Like, it was less corporate in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It was really like the OG culture. Think of Body Black Club, like fuck it, mutants.
Yes.
It was just like a really degen, but like really in tune with culture back then. And if I could change one thing, it would probably go back a little bit more to that kind of vibe, and a little bit away from kind of the more corporate, really controlled, like super serious vibe that I see in a lot, not everywhere, but in a lot of parts of Web3 right now. And that's probably because meme coins are hanging around. One of the reasons why meme coins are so sought after right now and have like this big run in the past few months. They're like kind of the counterculture to this more corporate stuff that's going on in other parts of Web3.
Do you involve yourself in meme coins, and do you think they are a net positive for the industry at scale?
So I'm not like a giant meme coin day trader. I usually buy like in at the later stage, like once they're ready. It's like, what's the right word?
They're already at zero.
Yeah, that's established in some way, like have some community, have some name recognition around it. So I'm confident in putting like money in. I'm not someone who buys like at sub 1 million market cap and writes it to $1 billion. But yeah, I think it's part of the culture. I think it's definitely beneficial to our space because, as I said, it's kind of the counterculture to the more corporate take. At the same time, it's not all positive, right? In meme coins, in a lot of ways, they are about culture, but at the same time, they are like slowly about kind of number go up and making like quick profit and flipping. And that's something like with my NFT mindset that I sometimes look at in a more critical way. But yeah, I think it's definitely part of Web3 and one of the better parts of Web3.
Well, I'll ask you this. If I gave you $500 in Invisibucks right now, and I said, well, we have the entire Web3 ecosystem at your fingertips. You can invest or throw money or purchase the asset, whatever word you want to use for this, into 5 teams with $500. You have $100 per team. Any sector, any vertical, you can go biased, you cannot go biased. It's up to you. Which 5 teams would that be? And why would they be that? And then the range for success with the vesting period, quote unquote vesting period, or whatever, the capital injection lasts for 3 years. Which 5 teams for you would they be?
Okay, so I will focus this on the NFT space just because I'm like more involved in. I will not talk about like the projects or the teams that I work with. So
okay.
I'm not gonna mention that because those are like the obvious answers.
Okay.
But I would probably put 500 in some like in the Yuga ecosystem. I think they got like a lot of criticism recently, but I still think, and I wrote this like to their anniversary yesterday. We record this on April 24th, so yesterday was the Azuki Eddie the Body Black Club anniversary. I still think it's like the Yuga team is still one of the teams that had the most impact in Web3. And I think now that Garga is kind of taking over again as CEO, there's a lot to come. Maybe not a comeback to like the crazy valuations we saw during the last bull run, but I think they will definitely have like a good quote unquote comeback. Other teams that I like, massive fans of Apache Penguins and the team there, I would definitely put 500 there. I think they have also something exciting quote unquote roadmap for the rest of this year. If you think about Apache World or the stuff around that. So I think that would be another team I would bet, especially because they did like so well during the bear market. So I can only imagine how well they would do, like if there's another big NFT bull run. Third team,
it's a low bar.
It would probably be the Memeland guys, because I really like what they've been doing, like recently, being in tune with culture, whether you think it's social-fi or now that runes are popping up, they're having like an exciting partnership there. So I think they're really, really smart at kind of being in tune with what people talk about, being in tune with attention. Probably one of the best teams that really, really understand attention and how attention works in our space. Same for DGods. If I have 500 left, I will also put 500 in the DGods, just because Frank is like really, really good at mastering kind of the attention game on crypto Twitter. And I think, like, of course, they had a few problems the past few months, but I think when they kind of level the product game up to where the social and marketing game is, I think they're probably one of the best teams to bet on too. There are a few more. I think I'm out of money, but there are a few more that I really like. And that we have really, like, if you look at it, we really alone in the NFT space alone, like a lot of great builders. Doodles is another one. Chimpers, a lot of people who have like teams behind it with good intentions. So I would probably have like a lot more money where I could, or much more places where I could allocate some money.
Last question. I was going to ask you, where can people follow you and all the usual stuff, but I don't think I even need to do that at this point. But what I will substitute the last question with, Wale, is you've always come a long way. You have a longer way to go, which is obviously part of the journey, which is the best part of the journey. What is Wale from 3 years ago proud of Wale that is currently sitting here today? And then what is something current Wale can do right now that will make future Wale very proud of the current version of you today?
I think if you would have told like the Wale 3 years ago when he started doing content, that this would be kind of how the journey would go, I don't think he would have believed you, just because it was like within such a short period of time, such a big amount of like amazing experiences and kind of community. But it was in a lot of ways still today, like sometimes it still feels unreal, like the way it developed over the past 3 years. So the Wale from 3 years ago would probably just be proud of being in this position, like in all these different areas. Also, not just like from the followers, any of that, but also like from the way that like my personality has developed over the past three years. Just like keep going. I think that was, looking back, the one thing that probably had like the biggest impact into my journey in the space was just to keep going, like especially in the beginning when there was like no really no signs that it would even remotely go into this direction, just to keep going. And I think probably if we go like 3 years in the future, the best thing that I or all of the people in Web3 or our creators or our builders could do is probably just to keep going, keep doing what you love, keep doing what you enjoy, don't stop. And probably if you try to improve like every day, then odds are that you will be in a better spot in 3 years than you are now.
Well, very well said. I appreciate your time here today. Hopefully the people will enjoy this as well. Will, thank you for your time. I appreciate you once again. Everybody, will see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I did.